acknowledge that or understand that, and maybe you can tell me if this is a false assumption, but we thought, okay, if we just record the information down at the asset level, we still would not expect it to roll up and do calculations in any of the other tabs.
It won't do anything.
We would just be conceding that we could take that out of reporting.
Yeah, it'll just sit there.
Right.
As condition of assets linked to things, but it's not. And then each of these assets has opportunities and all that.
Yeah.
But then we have to make sure that when you're where you really benefit from condition assessment is the ability to tie into work orders and into project management.
Yeah.
So what happens is here is you have opportunities.
Yep.
I have solutions.
Yep.
I have solution 1, 2, 3. So if my opportunity, this is say if my exterior skin or envelope of my building.
Yeah.
Envelope of my building has roof. My roof is it's decaying or whatever you want to call it, and it is this is that piece. My solution is to have a new roof, patch the roof, do nothing.
Yeah.
Right. So when you take these solutions and these opportunities, you can look at your entire list of opportunities and deficiencies and say, I want to create a capital project out of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because my 100 roofs are all within 1 year of replacement.
Yeah, right.
So I'm going to take this, and then what you do is you take these opportunities and tie it into a capital project.
Yep. Yep.
Or if this is a small thing, I could take it into a work order.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the life cycle of this.
Right. And I guess from our review with Kim, we thought we could still go that way with it, right?
We'll have to still do some work on it.
Okay. And what?
But I would actually, if you're just doing this and opportunity, we'll have to take it there. But then you are missing this whole calculation of your FCI. You would not know anything about your FCI or anything.
We would do that in reporting.
How would you do that in reporting?
Well, we would just, you could just write a report about all your asset deficiencies, which would be kind of.
You have to put a replacement value. You have to put all that in there.
Oh yeah.
You have to calculate all that. So it's going to be. Why would you write a report if Trirega's already doing it? And you have the module to do that.
Well, I guess it was. Do we want to spend $100,000 on a change order, or just do it through reporting?
Because you still have to spend some money on that.
To get to where?
To get this location, this thing, this relationship, and that connection done. So
I guess without seeing the forms, I don't know where it's right.
We'll just give you, all it gives you is list of assets.
Yeah.
And it'll tell you what the deficit is.
Right.
And then we can tie that into a mobile.
So without doing anything out of the box, we can get essentially the list of assets and their related deficiency information, right?
Yeah, that's all you'll get.
Yeah.
Rest, it will not tie into anything in Trirega.
Well, you could build opportunities off of it.
You can build opportunities, and you have to tie opportunities into the capital project.
Yeah.
So there'll be some work into going through that.
Yeah. Okay.
May not be as big, but so that's what you have to decide which way you want to go, and then we can revise it. I don't want to. That was my first thing was none of these calculations will be done.
Yeah.
You will not be able to nicely format everything, and you lose some of that granularity of work.
Yeah.
You're like bypassing a lot of the functions.
Right. Yep. I mean that's kind of where we're going with our thought on it, that we would suppress the system calculation, roll-up calculation form on the.
Okay. As far as you're in agreement, and we don't afterwards you say, hey Sanjeev, why is this not filling up?
Yeah, exactly.
And I want to make sure that.
I mean, I think in a perfect world we would do that, but we didn't know if we wanted to spend the resources on it, because we felt that we could probably achieve essentially the same reporting level from just by doing reports, either out of Trirega or out of our BI. Well, so that's TBD.
Yeah, but the BI also would cost you money to build that BI.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of have this, yeah, right, because it would be reporting off of a new source, but I mean, we have those reports today, so we know obviously what the calculations are that we want to do and all that good stuff.
Okay.
So I don't know, I think that we need to propose both options to our steering committee and see if they think the value is right to get it all in the tool and you know, optimizing the kind of built-in.
No, but how do you do the assessments of the assets? Would you do it at?
So we primarily do it with a third party, and they just kind of blitz it. So they would go into a building and spend a day in here, and then update all of the related asset information today in their tool, tomorrow in Riga.
Yeah, but how do they achieve that? How do you
input?
How do you input that?
So at Black Box, I have no idea. They don't take any devices into the field, at least the firm we're working with today. So they just use little hand recorders and make, you know, with floor plans and things like that, and then on the back end they're updating everything in their software. So that's their methodology. But,
yeah, but if they were doing it in Riga, what do you expect?
I mean, we've kind of superficially walked through the concept of them being able to do it in mobile, but I don't think we got to the point where we were adamant about that's the only way to do it, right? So we probably haven't spent enough time on that whole process yet.
Okay.
But, you know, thinking that they could do it either way, either through mobile or else
then,
into the tool.
Yeah, because that's why I need to know that.
Yeah,
because that's
for efficiency of data input, or for the mobile specifically?
Yeah, mobile specifically and the CR also.
Yeah.
Which way you're going.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, you know, there could be different two different proposals.
Yeah, I would be curious to ask you if anyone you're working with is using the mobile for that.
Yeah.
For condition assessment input.
Yeah, we're using how they do it, and one of the higher eds, one of the school districts is just going around to do that. I don't know how to. I didn't even receive that meeting, but I can.
Let me resend it to you.
That's okay. I'll show it to you. They probably know what it is.
Well, let me resend it to you so you could show us.
Where's the
HDMI?
Oh, let's see. It's right.
I think it's this one. Oh no.
Did they take it? Oh yeah.
Well, it's this PTN thing. Can you work with that?
Is he trying to connect to that screen in there?
Yeah.
It's the one hanging on that coat rack.
Yeah, but it's not there right now. We're just.
Well, it's this guy.
Oh, that's this one right here. It's this one. It's this one.
But do you only have HDMI? So we just need a different adapter.
Oh, I might have a different adapter.
Hang on one second.
Let me go get it.
Hang on, let me see.
Did you find it? No. I think I have one. Let me go get it.
Okay.
Let me see if this works.
Old fashioned, there you go.
Do an adapter.
Well, we won't be digital. Does she have to switch? Without you joining, these guys on the phone won't be able to see it. I mean, we could, of course, switch the input on this side to just see it through here.
Yeah, I think so.
She would have to change the hosting thing.
All I'm showing is, guys,
Actually, I don't have.
How do you change input on here?
What's that?
How do we change input on here?
Right here.
Oh, sure it is. I couldn't see that. Sorry.
okay, so what time did you send me the?
Go to PC&D.
I should have got an email from you.
Yep, I'll resend it. There you are.
This is the last Google.
It was like 1:35 or something like that. It came in 12:35 your time.
I can resend it to you, okay?
So the last one I got was.
Do you have something from Sarah West? W-U-E-S-T.
No.
All right. What is your email address?
It's SANJIB.
At eKipling?
So you're working on a similar solution for Northwestern right now?
Actually, for a couple of clients.
Okay.
They're working on. They were, I'm not sure if they are. I've had discussions with them.
Okay.
With Northwestern?
Yeah.
So are they working specifically on kind of the CMMS portion, on the work orders portion right now?
They're working on work orders right now.
Yeah, okay, and they're doing condition assessment along
that. So they're using VFA.
Yep.
And they want to bring in VFA information. And,
yep.
So they showed me the VFA system.
Yep.
What they're using.
Yep.
And we identified a few holes, and those holes are mainly the automatic calculation of the replacement value based on the cost of the building system.
Yeah.
And so that in ours is an input.
Yeah.
There's a calculation.
Right.
So he wants that.
Okay.
And again, I'm just working on a proposal for that.
Yep. Okay.
And,
okay, I have.
Do you remember who you're working with there?
Michael, I can send you the name.
Okay.
Just
I see these guys at conferences, but I don't always remember their names either.
Very fine. Do you have WebEx on yours?
I didn't.
Huh.
I'll tell you what. Can I do one thing?
Sure.
As you can see me here. We'll go to our meeting.
Maybe you know what, I'm going to try to send this out to you, a link, a different link.
That's okay. I'm just going to
set up something to go
I'll
to.
be done in 2 minutes. Hey guys, I'll give you the meeting ID. Meeting number.
Meeting?
Yeah, 759.
Hold on.
You can leave the audio on here. So 759-870-389.
Okay.
Could I get that from you one more time, Sanjeev?
All right. 759-870-389. I might have to download WebEx.
I think I gave you a link that included too much information, so I think if you tried.
You want me to try that?
Yeah, give it a try. It's a new one I just sent you.
I still haven't got it.
Okay. Here it is. Try that one.
Let me try them.
There you go.
All right, I'm going to get out of the GoToMeeting, okay? I'm back.
We're back into the WebEx.
Okay.
We're really serious about using WebEx here at the U.
I had WebEx before, then I found
that go to?
Yeah, I found it much easier.
I would agree. There are some applications that might be easier.
Yeah, I like GoTo.
Like Google Drive.
You like Google Drive?
That's another one. Am I sharing now?
You are sharing. Wait, are you sharing?
Yeah, it says.
Yes.
You're sharing your screen.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm seeing it now.
Okay, y'all see it now?
Now I see. Yep.
Yep, I do.
Okay.
So this is at, so this is the building.
Yeah.
Okay. This general information. This is that screen right there.
Right.
General information. There's an assessment tab, and the assessment tab, you know, we have the in-service date, gross area, the replacement value. This automatically gets calculated from this replacement value in here.
Yeah.
Was the overhead factor. So it does that. It calculates $31 million as the replacement value of this building. It then, at the bottom, you divide this up into different building systems. Yeah. Each of this, and you define what percent of is, you know, each of these building systems is, right? Once you go in there, and at this level, you go in and you can then define the condition of each building system. So if you look at here, the total condition rating is 28, which is based on it's taking 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So these are things that we need to find out from you if that works for you. So if it's a calculation based on this rating, it comes up to these, and these are the weightages provided for each of them. Sure. So 3, 2, 3, 4, right? So it multiplies that. Yeah. And comes up with this number. The total risk is 625. Is this 8, 9, 10? Okay. What it does is then takes this is the total replacement value of the building, and the adjustment is this is the adjustment, which is G into 0.01. Yeah. Okay. So, and what happens here is these opportunities hang here. These opportunities are at building system level.
So they're at building system level, or could they be at asset level?
Okay,
and then just associated with system?
Yeah, hang on, I'll show you that.
Okay.
So in this screen, this one I'm showing you, this sketch, you have the condition, you have the opportunities, you have assets also hanging off that. Yeah. I could go find an asset, and let's go use this. And when I go into this asset, this is the screen I sent you. Yeah. If you go in here, there's an assessment. Yeah. And this is the assessment that we have at the asset level. Yeah. But none of these things roll up. Yeah, right. Okay, that's the problem. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, if you just put it here, it'll not roll up to the other one. No,
have to do that via reporting.
So,
that's what we talked about.
Yeah.
So the thing, since we're here, replacement value, is that just a direct entry field?
That's a direct entry field.
Okay. So almost I would say there's not a scenario where that will work for us.
That's the scenarios I've been working with Northwestern to figure out what the calculation.
Okay, right. Okay. Okay.
We haven't, you know, I'm just developing a CR for them.
Okay. Because we would, the way our system's set up today, which I think works, it's the same as the way VFAs is set up because we've done a pilot with them too. But essentially just a lookup table with all the common values. So you might have like 500 unique kind of cost models for assets, and then you're just codifying all your assets according to that, and then you're just looking up the quantity and unit cost of that system.
So let me now go to, this is one of the customizations we have done. And let's go ahead and open up. I'll open this up. And this is where we have, you know, one of the things that we are looking at is here is the asset itself.
Yes.
And if I go into my assessment,
yes,
you'll see a lot different.
You've changed the stuff around a little bit?
We have changed all that. We have also changed the asset condition. So every time.
Every time they look
every time. So this ties into our mobile.
Yeah, I got you.
So every time you do an assessment, your guys come in.
Yeah.
We record what the assessment.
Yeah.
So that you see what the history, what's happened.
Yeah.
And then we tie the opportunity right here.
Yeah.
But in this case, also we bypass the whole FCI calculation.
So they must be doing that in some other format.
They're something. Yeah. So they're basically doing it here in this one. They're extracting it. Everything is at asset level. They're going down to the lowest, like the VAB. Right. If you look at these assets, right? I'm going into, this is some of the sample data, like they're going into gas, they put everything as an asset. Even if it's a gas supply system, which is actually a building system, it's been added as an asset.
Right, because they just want it all at the same level.
So they wanted everything at the same level.
Yeah.
But they're not doing any they're then taking this and, creating other.
This is kind of what we do. I mean, you'll have things like finishes. You're not going to be like, oh, that's an asset. So it's like the whole ceiling system.
Absolutely, that's what we do.
Right? But then something that's meaningful, like a pump.
So this is what we have done here is not Farmiga.
Yeah, exactly.
This is our enhancement.
Yeah,
that was also part of that.
Right. Yeah. Is this the stuff that we saw from NASA?
Yeah, you saw a couple of demos. Yeah. So that's and then when you go in here, like let's go into like one of the things. Okay, and then we are the asset. I was trying to go to the.
Oh, they're using So they're using AssetWorks, or they were formerly.
These guys are still using AssetWorks.
They're between both still.
Yeah.
Really?
So we are actually feeding AssetWorks from here.
Okay.
How do you guess that?
I saw a reference to AIM somewhere.
Okay. Yeah, they're using AssetWorks as their main.
Yeah.
So we're actually feeding this data into AssetWorks.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that
in one way, or is it somehow going?
just one way.
Okay.
But in this case, we'll have to feed it in Tririga. It'll be much easier.
Yeah.
If that needs to be.
Okay. So what are they doing here?
So these are the assessments. Okay.
Are they using?
So these are assessments.
Weighted average stuff?
Yeah, so this is the average. Like, basically, if it's good,
yeah,
it's 86 to 100.
I got you.
So when they go on with the mobile, they are saying, how good is it? Is it 86 or it's 100?
Yeah, I got you.
Or it's 87, 80. So it's basically a weighted average on each of these.
Yeah.
And then what happens is anytime they take a photograph or anything, we update the photograph of that asset. We keep a history of the photograph of the asset so you know what it looked like 10 years ago.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah, so this is pretty. That's a lot of things. A lot of data, a lot of things of how we did this.
Yeah.
And every walkthrough, then it keeps see this observation condition score.
Yeah.
Is 86. So we calculated the observation. That observed condition was 86.
Yeah.
That was out here. It was 85, between 85 and 86. So it was good, but on the lower end of good.
Yeah. I mean, we used to do both, where you kind of do that plus remaining life. Now we just kind of drive everything up remaining life.
Okay.
So it's like you just keep adjusting that, as you go out. If you do it's the same methodology, but you just say, nah, now you only have a year, or now you have 0, or now you're negative. But anyways, it's interesting.
So this is not again. This is the way you want to. Now, if I go to the buildings, I'll show you.
So if you go to building, what do they have?
I'll show you.
Just null values, or are they hiding things?
No, let's go.
Andrew, do you want me to move down and sit here?
No, I just want to stand. Am I freaking you
No,
out?
not at all.
Hovering?
I just want to make sure that you have the best view here.
Yeah.
Good, how are you? I had to set up a new WebEx. Give me hosting rights.
No.
I did. I should have.
So they bypass that whole thing.
So you just record some of the profile.
Yeah, that's but it's nothing. They don't even bother with it.
They're just doing that in AIM or something. Interesting.
David online?
Yes.
Hi, David.
Because I think they were more interested in getting the assessment people who come and do assessments.
Yeah.
And they were not getting good data. So the whole the idea is that actually I've not shown you the whole thing.
Yeah.
The whole thing is actually it creates a work order.
Oh, it does.
And it says so and so David's coming here to do the assessment. Go take building Donna them all the assets, and then they go
to create the route or whatever.
So they create a building, create all the assets. They go into the assessment. If they find a new asset, they put it in. If they retire an asset, they retire it. So they keep all the asset inventory very tight.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's not exactly what we need to do, but the concept of having it, kind of all of the assessment information at the asset level is what we would aspire to do. And then I think to just come back to this, I mean, I think that we would be interested in kind of two scenarios for the change order. One with optimizing it to utilize the logic that the 2.0 has, and one that doesn't. And then
you mean the pricing of two different options?
I think so, because we would kind of want to look at the the cost of doing it the initial CR10 proposal versus just doing it kind of the workaround, to be honest, because we would be able to record the information we want to, with the exception of the direct entry for replacement costs. We would need to do, that's kind of baseline, we need to do that in either scenario.
See, where I was going to was with really looking at is that the assets under the billing system, so you can have a component, you can go to, so say for example a roofing system, right? You really don't need to go, that's not an asset. So you can put the condition at that level. Now, if there's a mechanical system, then you put it at the asset level there and make sure it rolls up to that building system, but also provides you a delta. Because, say for example, you go in there and you say, okay, all I'm going to, as an asset, I want an HVAC piece of equipment, but the ducting and VAV, I'm going to lump all that into
distribution or something.
Distribution, and keep that at the higher level. So it's a combination of the two.
Yeah, you can do that.
And so that way you can go down as low as you want on some of the systems, but keep it high at some system and be able to do. Right now we do the assessment on a mobile right at the asset level. We don't do it at. So that's why in this case, each building system was actually created as an asset. That way you are basically bypassing this whole building system. You actually created that.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I think it would be, if it's possible, to look at both scenarios.
We'll look at both scenarios and and what the pros and cons are. Because in this scenario, then you're going to go build a whole bunch of reports outside the system to try and run your reports. I don't know what reports you have, but they will not be out of the box for us.
Right.
So are you going to put the pros and cons in the change, or just as a separate attachment?
I was thinking maybe we just put it as a separate attachment.
Okay.
And say, hey, these are the pros and cons for that. Because
otherwise,
the way we do it here, so it's like, in my opinion, either you do it right or you try and, if you have a workaround trying to, then you're always outside the system. In a workaround, you're always outside any reports you want to run. You're investing time and money on that, trying to keep a system by going around saying, I don't want to do it. Because I think what we should have done in this case is right. Instead of leaving it aside, is put it right. Take that building system out, make a combination building system an asset that it could roll up. That wasn't what the this person. Again, they had their own ways of doing it. That's why it's not easy to just take some customer saying, okay, this is what we have done. Every customer has their own specific requirements. Just that to show you different solutions we have built. So that
what looks right.
What looks right for you.
Exactly.
So, we can, at least you have that knowledge of how it's done there.
No, I know when we saw the pen demo, it was obvious to me that they were overkill in some areas that we didn't really care about. But
there's a reason there. I think they were doing it mainly because
they have they're almost exclusively internal assessment. No?
Everything is done by A&E companies.
It is. Okay.
what was happening is they would bring BFA in every year or some other A&E company because their campus is 350 years old. Okay, and all those buildings out there. In fact, it started in the president's house.
Yeah,
the first president was there.
Nice.
That's how Penn started, and Benjamin Franklin started that school.
Okay, cool.
The first university, and my son went there. That's
okay, you have some of the history fresh.
That's how I got the project. I went there one day, and I'm like, hey, I was dropping him in the dorm room. I said, let me go talk to the facilities guys.
Nice.
Oh, funny.
And my wife was setting him up.
Yeah.
And I just went down the street and I talked to them. I said, hey, what tribe do you got and everything else?
Yeah.
So, a year later, we got a project.
Funny.
So anyway, the short story is they have got a lot of historical buildings. They have to maintain the facade. So they have to spend a lot of time for historical reasons to do these assessments. So what they did.
Oh yeah, I mean for listed or registered properties. I mean that's what they're dealing with too, right?
Along that road.
Yeah.
They what they did is they went in and they would get these reports, but they never had. They could not run 5 years. Someone did a report 5 years ago. It was sitting somewhere in someone's report as a printed, but they could not run something. So they basically said, so we were actually competing against VFA on this. And our big difference was you own the product, you do the assessments, you keep the data. VFA was, you have to, license it from them, and they get involved in the assessment. So they wanted everyone. They wanted assessors to be totally different. They put out a bid.
I gotcha. Yeah. So they wanted the software to be separated from the assessors.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. So that's exactly why. That's the biggest value of Trivega is that the software is owned by you, your data is owned by you. Tomorrow you don't want to use that. Engineering company A, you go to B and say.
Yeah. I thought BFA went more that direction.
They were starting to
recognize themselves as more of a software. But then they did get bought out.
They got bought out by Accruent.
Accruent, that's right. Which is kind of funny.
Which is famous.
Famous. Yeah, right. So.
We love famous.
Yeah.
Well, actually, there's rephrase that. They have done very well for us for the length of time they've been installed.
Yeah. So
I just found out that Stanford was their first customer.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
We were early
too. They replaced them they replaced them over 10 years ago with Trivega.
Yeah.
I was talking to them and they said, Famous was one of the first software. We were one of the first customers.
So the next steps are?
Yeah, I was gonna say on the CR10. So the original one didn't really get into this topic of how replacement value is derived from.
I wasn't sure.
Direct entry, right, of course.
So I wasn't involved.
Yeah.
And
And I'll look at it again after benefiting from our conversation today and see what else might stand out as questions or things we would think we overtly don't need or need more emphasis on. So I can follow up with an email.
Yeah, because I need to read that CR.
Yeah.
Because it was just done by your request. And I was responding. And that's why I said I felt important to show you.
Yep. Yeah.
Revisit it, show you what the pros and cons are.
Yeah.
And see which direction. So if you go in one direction, you don't say, hey, you guys didn't advise us.
Right.
Yeah.
In the right direction.
Right.
Now we have to redo all this.
Yeah. Well, we want the advisement so then we can make a decision.
With correct decision and know what the expectations are.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I'll turn something around to you quickly just with my observations, and then obviously leave it in your court to.
Yeah, but it seems like you want to do the asset, but I would like to take that asset and put it into the building system so it actually rolls out.
Sure. Yeah.
And,
I think if there's a meaningful distinction between the effort and the cost between the two, then it would be important to kind of show both options. But if in your opinion there's not, then you just have to advise us that there's just some diminishing return in even trying to go kind of the suboptimal route. So. Okay.
Now, we have 5 minutes, so a couple of questions I want to find out. In this SFP, we all get confused because there's a product that Trivega called SFP.
Sure.
There were some things about the real estate piece for space and in the requirements.
The SFP requirements?
Yeah.
You know which ones those are he's referring to?
No, because they all got kind of blended. I mean, so, I mean, it's kind of that intersection, right, between all of those different modules. But we've backed away from a lot of what the Tri-Riga SFP capabilities are because we're kind of looking at that as optimization down the road.
So that's more SFP. Typically, you want to implement after you've got your entire portfolio going.
Exactly.
And there and have everything working.
Right.
Everything working, then you have SFP gets implemented as an add-on, and there's no point. You can't do SFP without having all the base data. Right.
Exactly. And so we recognized that once I think Todd had done the demo, and at one of the sessions we were at with Kim, or at one of the spades, vice versa, I don't remember, but it became pretty apparent to me that
what about the leasing side? There was something like.
I don't know any. I'm really far separated from the real estate.
But it's got thrown into SFP.
A bit of.
I was going to say, but they're the space people are looking at that SFP, so it's a little bit different of what they were using it for. SFP is talking about head counts and what types of rooms there are and how they can forecast that. And then you guys are rolling SFP into like the assessment and the condition assessment and the CPIs and things.
Right. Well,
yeah, I mean, at this point, we're using it kind of just for the intake, which was the other piece we wanted to talk a minute about today, if there was the opportunity. So, like the project request, kind of.
Yeah, like Space was interested in that stacking and blocking screen, Sanjeev, but using it after prototype and testing it, out of the box and just kind of seeing if they need enhancements to it. But that's the part that they were kind of interested in, which is the meat and potatoes of what Tri-Riga calls SFP.
Yeah, so I mean, the way we were thinking about it going into it, it would be kind of it sounds crude, but just maybe a container for wrangling all of these different kind of multi-year capital improvement plans, because we have, such a kind of distributed organization here where all the different colleges kind of have their aspirations and their plans. And through different processes, we kind of amalgamate that, and we're kind of the clearinghouse of who gets money and what gets advanced.
We actually did, in fact, Stephanie and David Stephanie worked on with City of Dallas.
Yeah.
And we call it the NI information.
Okay.
So what they do is they have the same thing. Stephanie, they have a lot of opportunities.
We're just wrapping up one. You can sit down.
So yes.
That's okay. Next meeting. You're okay.
So you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I think that's what they're looking at, all these project requests going into NI. Like a needs inventory is what we call it. And the needs inventory is like everyone's request.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, that's,
right. I had an initial conversation with Kim, and she had expressed some concern over the license being a potential roadblock, though, for some of the users, and she wanted me to look into other avenues and map for that. And so that's what I did. I looked into other avenues for putting a request in versus using the funding request strictly. So City of Dallas is using the funding request, and they associate the opportunities to that. We would, of course, implement the same type of logic within whatever request form, I guess, best suits the purpose. So depending on what users and who's going to have the ability to submit the request, she led me to believe that anybody could submit a request for this, for the project request.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's how we're currently set up. Not that that's a absolute necessity, but that's how we currently are set up.
So with that in mind, that kind of takes the funding request kind of off the table, because it's strictly.
She had talked about kind of, I'll get the terminology wrong, but just kind of mocking up or having like a duplicate form that looked exactly like the funding request, but it was more accessible, and then porting that information into the funding request.
Right, and that's kind of the same idea. And so that's what I did was I kind of looked at some of the other request forms to see what had a little bit more of the components based on what I looked at for your current project request. And believe it or not, the move request is pretty similar in some aspects because it takes into consideration some of the I don't want to say space-related questions, but you had fields in there that were more along the lines of, are you changing the use? Are you, is it a new space? Are you moving? Is the space assigned to your department? Is there urgency? So a lot of these components are on that form. Already on the move request form, and we could use that form to generate the project request form.
But would that preclude the use of the move request form for its true intent?
No, because we would add logic to incorporate the project request form.
Okay, so there would be both. There's a hijacked move request form that would be renamed, and then the native original one for its actual intent.
Right, potentially, yes, because I think that the move request is more accessible for more of the users. So I'm going to verify that before, going too far with that, but that is the path that we're looking at, and there was mapping done based on that particular object. So
okay, interesting. So then you would just you would access that or originate that from like a request central, and it would be named project request, so there would be no mistake about the distinction.
Right. That's correct. Yep.
All right. Well, so it sounds like jury's still out on that, but you're working on that?
That's correct. I mean, we do have the mapping based on using that object. I do have that prepared.
Okay.
It's just, like I said, I do want to have some more conversations with Kim to make sure that I'm on the right path with all of that, because she went on vacation right after I completed it. So.
Okay, yeah, I thought she was returning tomorrow or something like that.
Right. So.
We have a hold on the calendar for the 25th in the afternoon if Kimberly's able to make it to talk about project initiation. We're waiting for a confirmation if that's going to happen.
And make sure, Stephanie, you're talking to Kate, too.
Okay, and when was that you had available?
Is it Monday? Monday the 25th. We were hoping to have up to 2 hours with Kim. I think she'll be on site.
Okay, perfect.
Or maybe not. Doesn't matter. But she was going to be dedicated for some other stuff for University of Minnesota. So we were thinking like a 1 to 4 kind of window of opportunity.
I thought Kim was going to be there on site Tuesday, Wednesday. I could be wrong, though.
Okay.
Actually, I believe David's on the phone. I think she's going to be here Monday, Tuesday as well. And so it's just going to determine if she has the time to do that on the afternoon of the 25th. So we're waiting for that confirmation.
All right. Yes, I would love to be invited to that because it's going to be a good portion.
I think we could resolve this if we could find that time.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
But David, as soon as you know, let us know. We can make sure that Stephanie gets invited.
And Kate, apparently.
And Kate, too, yes, sorry. Well, Kate actually won't be able to.
Okay.
Won't be able to get one
conflict.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would send the mapping sheet over to you for your review. I don't know if it would be any help to you to.
I would look at it.
Okay.
I would be interested. Do you have my email through the WebEx invite? I'm the Chan0391.
Okay.
Cool.
If not, Andrew, I'll get a tour.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
Well, it looks like the next meeting is upon us, so we should probably turn over the
So we'll just keep
microphone.
this phone conversation going, so those who are joining the code discussion can stay online.
So I think we have to Frank. Send that to Frank.
Yeah,
we had to create a new meeting first.
All right, David, I'm going to go ahead and drop off. Have a nice afternoon, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.
I want to go back to being
Thanks for coming in.
So I'm going to forward the one off to Frank, the one that we're on.
I was on like this perfect mental path and description, and you just derailed it. So now it's probably going to cost the university like
billions.
Well, at least.
Yeah, all right. We should try to be more focused.
No, exactly.
Can't multitask like the kids these days, can ya?
I'm done. I'm fried.
Minimize your screen or.
Oh, I'm still on.
You want to stick around, Andrew?
Yeah, wish I could.
How do I get out of it?
Thanks, Sanjeev. I'll email you, okay?
All right.
As a follow-up.
Great.
Good to meet you. Take care.
How do I get out of this?
I'm trying to see where.
Janet can project.
We're staying on this WebEx, right?
Oh, if you want, yeah, we can stay on the same WebEx.
Okay.
Yeah, because I forwarded it off to Frank.
Okay. Oh, you did? All right, then I won't finish typing.
As long as everybody else, there's nobody else.
Okay, I just want to make sure it's still being recorded. But I can't see.
I was just letting you know.
I hate that.
Are you going to be able to stop recording, Sarah? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I can't see where I can't see where I have control.
Right now.
Andrew, you just left.
This is his screen, but I can't get to.
I can shut my system down.
So we're going to continue the webinar.
Oh, here. I have to do
We're
input.
waiting to see if that will work. Okay.
I think this is where.
And it's still recording.
I know, so that's what I wanted to stop. I'll pause.
And then up very top, where it's next to file, the keep going to where file is, all the way on the left. And then go to share. No, go back up. Share is the second.
No, yeah.
There you go, and my screen.
Stop.
There, you are
See it
now
now, Frank?
recording and sharing.
No train.
Yeah, now you know.
You will now sit in on every session.
Yeah.
All right.
I can see it now.
Nope, you're good. Okay.
Right.
Yep.
So these are all the different components of the university GL structure. So from a bare bones standpoint, I guess there's certain required fields, I guess, on all transactions. You know, you need to have a fund, a debt ID, an account, and then you either need to have a program or you need to have the combination of those three blue boxes of project value and a PCBU and an activity. The three blue boxes down there kind of denote they're either used for sponsored projects, so research going on here at the university, or they're used for capital projects when we're constructing a large building, making significant remodeling changes to building structures at the university. So every transaction at the university kind of has to have that middle path there, fund, debt ID, account, and then either program or project values. And then kind of the bottom of that first page, they're kind of a series of optional account string attributes where FinApple ID can be used, and that's generally, I don't know, I think the main purpose of that at the university is if you want to tie some funding to a particular researcher, they might get some allotment of money to fund staffing their lab, you know, or equipping their lab, supplying their lab. And then the chart field 1, chart field 2 are kind of very flexibly used fields by university departments for a variety of purposes to kind of further track certain activities. Cost shares is something we kind of need to accommodate, but it's not used very often at the university. So I don't know, anything else? So each one of these fields kind of is its own unique, a distinct value, and each one has an effective date, when they're created, when they're inactivated, but the university has, to make it a little bit more complex, every unique combination of these values needs to be set up in order to process transactions against it. So from a fund debt ID program, if I wanted to put a chart field 2 on a specific type of transaction, I'd have to make sure that we're set up in university budgeting in order for anyone to process a transaction against that unique combination.
I think one of the challenges is there's variable length fields with variable components, and we we would like to know which ones are actually active with what comes in to Tririga for people to choose.
So, when you say, and what about non-sponsored activity? That's just day-to-day running of the university.
Yeah, generally, it's the university calls it sponsored versus non-sponsored activity. Sponsored activity is kind of all of our research. You know, anything that an outside entity is granting the university money to do research. Everything else kind of falls into the non-sponsored bucket.
So if there's a work order done for that space that's being sponsored, then the cost of the work order would fall in that bucket.
Yeah.
Okay. Everything related in that space, no?
Well, not necessarily a space standpoint. I mean, the space itself, someone might be asking for work and they want to charge their research grant, the sponsored account string. It may not necessarily be tied to the space per se, but whatever someone needs done.
Yeah. They may be putting a wet bench, lab bench or something that needs to be built in, right? That's not something that's going to be a non-sponsored activity.
Well, it kind of depends. It's kind of up to the customer to determine how they're going to pay for it. You know, they might have this grant money that it's an eligible expenditure for the grant, and they might give us a grant expenditure account string. It might not be eligible for their grant though too, and they might have to find some other operating dollars that they would pay for that with. So we're kind of blind to that eligibility decision that we assume when people provide us an account string, it's a valid account string. But the problem we run into a lot of times is that we have a lot of non-financial people providing a lot of this information, and they've got a sticky note on their computer, you know, and it's their account string that maybe they leave something off, you know, or they forget their sticky note, they lose it, and they're going off memory. So the idea we were kind of thinking about is that we only get in Tririga the valid account string combinations that are recognized by the university at a particular time.
So what is the process of creating a new account string? Like if you have the fund, the department, so where does that get created? Who creates that?
Well, it gets created in PeopleSoft. So if I want to spend against each one of the pieces, you know, the fund, the debt ID, the program, the chart field 2 are all valid individual values as far as the universe is concerned. I still have to set up a budget at that level within PeopleSoft in order for Janet to pay an invoice against that account string.
So you set that up in PeopleSoft?
Yeah, I would have to set that up in PeopleSoft to enable someone else to charge against it.
So then what would happen is that, you know, assume, David, we're doing one of the interfaces, right? We're bringing the cost codes. So that would bring the valid cost code, that structure, down to Tririga. So, so that field, they'll have to select from that field. And if they don't select from that field, that means that's validation, right?
Okay.
They cannot enter what we
the whole class code could be brought over?
Yeah, we could bring the whole thing. Right, Frank?
Well, let me back up a little bit and just get some basic questions answered, because I want to get some clarity about how these things are built. And the first question is, are these done just once a year at budget time, or can these chart strings be created at any point in time during the year?
Throughout the year, they can be created.
Anytime you have a new fund.
Yeah. A lot of times people will forget to set certain things up that they normally have activity against. So at any point in time during the year, that unique combination of values would need to be enabled during the fiscal year to charge activity to it.
Okay, so then the next question is, when someone wants to apply a charge string to a transaction, is your expectation that they have to pick the entire charge string, all 12, 10, 11 columns as a single string, or are they mixing and matching a fund and a department ID and then an account? How does that conceptually work? Am I picking from this long list of chart fields available, or am I drilling in by virtue of a fund and a department ID and then an account?
Well, I think ideally we would be able to steer people, you know, so that they could, if they know their DEPT ID, if there might be a way to help either the end user or whomever within our organization that might be helping facilitate the work, that you might know your DEPT ID, you know your fund, and you can enter those and then get a more minimized list of what to choose from. But ideally, wherever they want to charge it, we would want them to see that. Yeah.
See the whole thing.
Yeah.
So if you put the fund, sorry, Frank.
So they're never actually conceptually entering values in these fields. They're always picking an existing charge string.
That's good.
That's, in our theory, yes. That's what we would ideally not allow free-form capability, yes.
Okay.
Because it's not going to do us a whole lot of good if we get something that's not valid in PeopleSoft. We'll have issues later.
Sure. Yep. Understood.
Yeah, to me, this is Todd. The way I've been understanding it is you're going to give us with this integration, you're going to give us the valid account strings already built. So this, although it's nice to see how they're built, ChartRiga really doesn't care, you know, what the first 5 characters are. You're going to give us that entire string. So when that comes into ChartRiga, that's a background information for us then to set up the hierarchy with organizational charge strings and location charge strings and service account charge strings. So that's a conversation, Frank, I think you guys will be having next week, is like that hierarchy set up of this valid chart string that comes in with the PeopleSoft integration.
Yeah. Yeah, the point that I was after, and the question was answered, is that it has to be in existence in order to be used. So we're not going to have any free-form entry. What we may have is some ability to drill into chart strings based on fund or DEPT ID to narrow down the search from what could be thousands of rows of available chart fields to the ones that are relevant to the type of transaction that you want to be able to enter by virtue of the fund or department ID.
So I think what Frank's going to is, like, if we get this broken down, if I click on the fund, I don't know how the data comes in, but if I select the fund, then I should be able to see all the departments, and I select the department, I should be able to see all the account IDs. Then when I select that account ID, it takes that whole combination. That'll be, from an end user perspective, easier to pick than a whole bunch of numbers.
Right.
I think the other thing that they had talked about is having a flat file where you just have full numbers, but within that form having a field for fund that's each broken out, and then using the query feature that you guys have.
So build actually a hierarchy type of a thing. So, you know, that way it'll be easy. Okay, so that's good. Now.
So how often do these chart fields, how often do these account strings get closed? How do we define that you can no longer use a chart string? We get them in through PeopleSoft, the integration. I'm assuming that once they're available through the integration, they're able to be used. You mentioned something about dates per element of the chart field?
In activation date, you said there was an effective date and an activation date.
Yeah. So, they don't inactivate too many values.
What if you run out of funds? And no one keeps relating to it.
Well, then in theory, yeah.
Well, I think, isn't it that the full account string is valid for a year, and then the following July, the department has to re-budget in that account string. So it's not really an effective date as much as whenever an account string in its entirety is budgeted, it's good then for that fiscal year. And then come July, we would need to get a load of these now are the account strings that are budgeted for the current year. Isn't it a little bit more about that and less about Because a debt ID, for an example, or a fund never goes inactive because that fund is used across the whole institution. It's really the combination of the account string of the different fields that would be inactive or not. So an account value could be supplies for pencils. Well, we're never going to inactivate that, but maybe I'm not going to budget that this year.
And that's kind of the control. It's to prevent Michelle's unique account string from getting any activity on it, is that as long as it doesn't get budgeted, no one can charge activity to it.
So there's some way of filtering that out then. That's what I think Frank's after, is if there's an expiration or someone saying, hey, once the budget is zero, stop someone from...
No, the budget being zero doesn't have any bearing on it. It's, did you open this account string to allow charges to occur this year? Right. That's the criteria. And then next year, I may not open that account string because we're not going to have any charges.
The interface, then you'll have to grab what are the valid account codes for that year.
What are the valid combinations? Yeah.
That's why when Todd starts talking about a hierarchy, if we're just, I don't think if we're getting a hierarchy, that we're going to be able to validate the combination.
So, yeah, one option is that, we're going to look at how the data comes in.
Right.
What Todd was saying is that if we get that string, to see how we can break it in a logical way, break it down and so that it's, from an end user, it's easy to choose. Mm-hmm. But from your perspective, it's that long.
Right. If we can do that, I think that'd be great.
So that's what Todd was going to, is breaking it up in a hierarchy. I know he's jumping to a solution, but without seeing what data is. So
we're talking about tens of thousands of rows of valid account string combinations.
So I think that's why Frank was asking whether how often does it change? Now, again, this is getting important to an interface discussion because, you give us one big load, right? It might take hours to run it, and are you able to give us delta in that every time we...
Maybe that's where we'd use the effective date. Well, no, because the effective date would go back to July 1st.
Todd, are you already having these discussions? I don't want to jump on your... but I think that's one of the things that we need.
Oh, no, we haven't. That's the second phase of the integration, so we're not having any discussions around hold on, the charge string with the IT folks. I choked on a Tic Tac, sorry.
That's bad.
And I don't know when you get to those...
So we're talking about people and vendors first and departments, and then the next phase of it, Brian knows, I thought I heard him in the room, that then we're talking about the GL integration. So we haven't talked about it yet.
Okay.
But I think your question is a good one. I don't know how you would know that suddenly an account string was open August 16th without comparing this ginormous file against this ginormous file and finding, oh, here's 3 new ones.
Yeah. Because that typically, what happens is if you give us a whole new thing, it's a real problem.
They've had the discussions already in IT about having our table and then bringing in from PeopleSoft, doing the compare and then sending them the delta.
You can do that.
So we would probably, it sounds like it's on us to figure the delta. So they're Brian is
I'm not sure how we're going to do that.
That we don't know, but I do know that.
I don't care who does it. I don't know how we're going to do it.
Brian's got it.
Okay.
I think, it's in phase 2, but at least start thinking about all these things. Yeah. Now, going down to, we have a number of streams, right? We have space, maintenance. I know Sherry just gave me a 5-minute on work orders last time, which is kind of very, so, all of that has to go and tie into the string, right? Yep. So I think the next thing is how, I know about space, I think Todd's probably already talked about it, right, on the...
We're not clear yet on how these are going to tie. That's the one we're the most not clear on.
Okay. No? The question is, what do you bill for?
Well, I think more the question is, we don't necessarily bill the occupants of the space. I think this is what we talked a little bit about last time, is based on where a building is located. We bill it to the department in
the department in the space, Sanjeev.
Yeah.
No, it's not the department in the state.
It's almost always never that department.
The department, whatever you're tying that organizational charge code to.
Right, but right now we're not, in space they charge it not to it's the people that are in there right now that we put the department against, the org against, not the group that pays for it. And the group that's in there, there's no tie to the group that pays for it. The group that usually pays for it is associated with an operational FM account that's responsible for that building.
That's what we talked about.
So that's why we have the two allocations there on the space record, the occupancy allocation and the chargeback allocation.
We have
and that's also done at the space level.
Yeah.
But we've had discussions with Lisa where she's not necessarily certain that she wants to let go of either one of those for us to use in this manner. At least that's the...
So I think last time, Sherry, when we spoke about it, you said typically what you do is you take, say the building has 3 occupants, right? The 3 departments, and science, biology, whatever. Each of them, on an annual basis, you get a total occupancy of the rentable area, the inside square footage, from the space management system.
Right.
That becomes, so you take that and say this building is 33% biology, 33 math, 33 physics. You store that at the building level. And any work orders that are in the common area gets prorated. That's not like the corridors and all that gets distributed. No, I didn't hear that.
That's not.
No, we can try to go out for you again. So during the year, let's say during the year, all the work that occurs in that building gets charged to a facilities management district that's responsible for that building.
Okay, that's correct.
So not to the occupants of the building, unless there's something that they request that's outside our normal standards. So, well, and I'll say except for non-support buildings, like athletics, if we do something for these non-support buildings, we would bill the occupants of the building.
So you have to have the flexibility of both.
We have 2 ways of billing.
Now, the FM, the facilities district, where does that fall in here?
They would be a fund, a depth ID, a program, and an account.
Now, is there, do you maintain that relationship, or how do you get to know which building is in which facilities district?
We maintain that in our current system.
Right.
In your maintenance. So you'll have to manually go in and say this building is part of this.
Well, it gets set up that way, and then the default codes on everything in that building would go to that district for their expense.
Okay.
Yep. If it's not assigned to an equipment or anything else, it's a default. There's going to be a hierarchical default of things that the work task looks at. Location is after capital projects and then assets, equipment assets. Then it starts looking at location and going down. So looks at the building, then looks at the campus, and looks for account stream that way.
So can we take a few minutes and back this up to the bigger picture? Because you guys are delving into individual transactions, and I'm still trying to understand the overall accounting practice.
Yep.
Sure.
We set up these account codes, we bring them into Tririga and maintain them in Tririga through an integration of some sort, and we then make these account strings available to be selected on any transaction in Tririga. So if I'm looking at this correctly, let's just start with something like that you were already discussing, I guess. If we're performing on work for a specific location where we're picking up materials and applying labor against it, when we're ready to charge, allocate, capture those costs in the general ledger, at the end of the day, what results is an amount and a string, general ledger string, as represented here on this PDF that gets passed to the general ledger system. Is that correct?
Correct.
So labor based on a bunch of parameters, which may include the location, the organization performing the work, would end up in a dollar amount that's written to a chart string constructed in this fashion.
Correct. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Every transaction we are processing is also going to have a credit side of that transaction as well. So I think on the surface of it, what you say is correct, but I just wanted to go ahead, keep going.
So when you're actually creating the journal entry, obviously you're going to have debits and credits. The values in the account string is going to be one of these entries in this long 10,000 row list of account strings, correct? Whether it's a debit or credit,
it could be multiple.
it's going to be.
Right, it could be multiple account strings that
Understood.
are being charged by one transaction.
Yes, understood, as you're breaking out the costs, absolutely. What I'm trying to drill to is, and I'll just ask the bigger picture question and then we can come back to it. We do things in the projects arena whereby we're creating a budget, then we're acquiring the materials to complete the project, and then we may be paying a third party for the actual work associated with creating that. All of those transactions end up generating debits and credits using these charge strings to the general ledger system. When we set up leases and we make our payments on leases and we do our FASB accounting or whatever accounting structure we're using, the net result is that we're going to end up with a accounts payable entry, for example, that follows this chart string, and a cash entry that's the offset to the AP entry, using one of these chart strings to post to the general ledger. So every transaction that we perform in Tririga in some way, shape, or form is going to derive or have the end user select one or more of these chart strings to perform the journal entries relative to that transaction.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And do you find that that distribution and breakdown is primarily done by the person that executes the transaction, or is done by some sort of logic that you can define based on types of work, where it's performed? Do you generally feel that if you were to take a transaction and break it into multiple accounts, that would have to be done manually, or do you have an expectation that there is logic that we can build in to derive those account strings?
I think from a work task standpoint, which is going to be the biggest volume of activity, I think there's going to be a default account string based on a variety of factors. So typically, we'll have a default account string that I think the system will be able to apply to a work task, for instance, based on where it is, maybe if there's a piece of equipment being worked on that's associated to the work task. I think we wind up billing back to departments for a lot of work that is above our typical support model standards. So I think the default is going to get derived based on that similar logic, but we're going to wind up changing who we're charging based on what we're doing. That I think is probably going to be some manual intervention, because we can talk about that, and maybe there's ways to avoid the manual intervention, but right now we have to intervene and charge a customer for certain types of work that aren't typically covered under our support status agreement.
Okay, so it's safe to say that we have a universal set of account strings that we can apply to transactions throughout the Tririga application, and it is the same set of account strings that tie back to your general ledger system. So we have this baseline list of 10,000 plus account strings that can be applied to the transactions that we process through Tririga. How we define the controls that allow us to make automated decisions about each of those, that's really a track-by-track discussion that we have to have. How do we do that for projects? How do we do that for operations and maintenance? How do we do that for real estate? How do we do that for inventory management? So determining defining our ability to automate the assignment of those account codes or account strings is something that we'll want to talk about in each of the tracks. The main thing that I was after today and trying to understand is the scope of the availability of the charge codes and the structure of the charge codes and any dependencies in the charge codes just within the structure of the charge code.
I'm just not sure what value we're going to have about talking about it in each of the tracks, and we're the ones who really do this part of the transaction, and we'll be giving you the information on what needs to be there.
It makes sense, I think, if it's a small group, is to figure it out, and then we can bring in make sure the tracks know about it.
Well, I'm sorry. What I had intended to say is this is obviously what we're doing in this admin track is that we're going to go through each of the modules and determine how we go from a transaction.
Yeah, and then we will disseminate what our tracks need to do if they have to modify some of the screens or the business process.
Yep.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. What I simply meant was that each set of transaction types in Tririga is going to have its path to deriving the chart strings, the account strings for the transactions relevant to that type of activity, and it won't be the same for each, right? So that's what we have to define in the next couple of weeks is each of those individual sets of transactions. How do we establish defaults for those transactions, and then how do we provide the ability to select the appropriate codes and amounts for each of those transactions when the default doesn't necessarily satisfy the requirement?
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So I think I have a better understanding of the composition of the chart fields, the general ledger chart fields. I think I understand what the end result will be of all of the transactions inside of Tririga. So then, obviously the next steps will be looking at these chart strings, or do you call them chart fields, general ledger account strings? What is your proper terminology for these things?
One is a chart field, and the combination is a chart string, right?
Or an account string.
Account string.
So chart string or account string?
Everybody's kind of got a bit of different terminology to it, too. I call them account combinations. But
oh, geez Louise. Don't call them that.
Maybe that's why Sherry and Michelle are always confused when we're talking.
I think the people call them chart string.
The complete, unique combination of the chart string.
Does PeopleSoft care if let me ask the question this way. In order to feed PeopleSoft, do these have to be a specific length regardless of how many actual characters are being used?
Yes. So that's on the sheet that's on the screen. Each field, it will show the number of characters and if it's characters, alpha, or numeric, or both.
So when we feed it back to PeopleSoft, we don't feed it as a string. We feed it as each individual. We pull it apart and we feed it to them in each individual field.
Yeah.
Each individual component.
Okay.
So yeah, we send them a chart string.
Strong string.
Correct. It has to all be parsed.
That's good. That's good. Because otherwise the additional work gotta get broken up.
Yeah, we don't. Yep.
Well, yeah, you have to figure out how many spaces to put in between if there's supposed to be 15 characters and you've only got a 6
Some of the older systems that they were like, they were like, you know,
throw it all
messy.
together.
Yeah, the older financial systems are messy. That's good. PeopleSoft.
So one other thing we've kind of talked about a little bit here internally, and I don't think a whole lot with eKIPM, is the account segment really tells what the nature of the expenditure or revenue is, you know, so if it's supplies, repair and maintenance, professional services, consulting, you know, so that's kind of what that piece of it is. When somebody sets up a unique account combination, what do we call it? Chart string. They don't necessarily set up a specific account. So once they set up a unique chart string, any expenditure can be charged against that account string. Does that make sense? So if I've got an account string for finance here and we charge salaries and repair and maintenance and whatever against it, as soon as I set that up, someone can come in and charge repair and maintenance or anything, any type of expenditure to that unique account combination. So what we've kind of thought of, sorry, go ahead.
However, you said that the full string has to be built out in PeopleSoft in order to charge to it. Didn't I hear that?
Getting into that.
I'm sorry.
It's a required field on every transaction. So I don't know, when someone sets up a unique chart string, they'll generally put a generic account value on it, and that effectively opens it up to any type of expenditure on that unique account string, chart string.
For the account portion of the account string.
Right.
Right.
So what we're hoping to do to complete the string for sending back to PeopleSoft is basing that value on the type of transaction that occurred. So if it's a labor, the account value. So if it's so on a work task, you'd have the complete string minus the account. And if it was a labor transaction, the account number is 123. If it's a material transaction, it's 567. If it's so based on the transaction type, we would be able to know what to feed that account string so that we don't have to create, you know, 6 different account string values on a work task for each type of transaction on a work task.
So right now, in our Compass system, we've got we can charge one account value for everything related to that work order. So materials, labor, any invoices you might pay against a work order, it all codes to the same account value. We might be charging 50% to this account combination and 50% to this account combination, but they're both going to go to repair and maintenance, or they're all costs related to that work order are going to hit the same account value.
And we don't want that. Moving forward, we'd like to
But I think what Frank was asking is when we're checking to see if it's a valid account string to use, what we would be looking at is at the budget table, were the expense codes opened for a particular fund, debt ID, and program.
Right.
We don't have to look at was a specific expense code opened, it's just a generic expenses can get charged on this fund, debt ID program. And if that's open, then we can charge that account string for anything.
And by extension, account.
Yeah, but I was just trying to put it in words because it comes from budget table as an expense.
Right.
That's what it's called. So when we're verifying it.
Does that make sense, Frank? I might have misspoke earlier when we said about what creates a valid account combination. Generally, when we set up new account strings, new account chart combinations, chart strings in PeopleSoft, we might put in a generic account value, but just as soon as you set a unique chart string up, any account value can be used on that chart string. Yeah.
So the account value is not part of the unique account string, or yes, the account value itself is not part of what you consider to be a unique account string.
No, it's not. As soon as a unique chart string is set up and enabled, less the account value, any account can be charged to that chart string.
But you have to have an account.
But you have to have an account on the transaction. That's a required field.
So what makes a unique account string? Is it fund, depth ID, and either program or the 3 fields below, the PCBU project and activity?
Yes, correct. And it could be any of those optional fields would create a unique account string as well. Chart combination. So, I mean, we can look at, bring a few examples next week, just to kind of show you how it works.
For each of the streams, right?
Some of the departments that are used.
For stage, for projects.
Okay, let me see if I can ask the question just a slightly different way. We say that account code is required. Understood. You know, in the teal box there, fund, depth ID, and account are required, and then one of program or PCBU project and activity. What makes an account string unique could be any combination of characters with the exception of the account code, since you just added in that final statement.
Correct.
The optional ones down at the bottom. Irrespective of that, in order for Tririga to create a journal entry that's going to get passed to PeopleSoft, it has to have an account number in it, an account number value. Will we find that combination of all 11 values, including the account number, in the account strings that get passed over from PeopleSoft in the interface? Or will we find everything but the account number itself in the table that you send over from PeopleSoft?
I think, generally speaking, the account value is part of it, but as soon as somebody adds a record to that table, any account value can be used on that chart string. So a lot of times there's a generic dummy account that is used on a lot of those when we set up a unique chart string. There's a generic dummy account value that's put in. That's not it's not a recognized expenditure account value, but it's kind of used from a budgetary standpoint to open up these chart strings.
So don't you think we would get from PeopleSoft or what we would put into Tririga is all of the account strings that are valid and open, and then I believe based on the type of transaction, an account value will be assigned to the transaction that's going to go back into PeopleSoft based on if it's a project, if it's repairs and maintenance, if it's labor. So we don't need to get that from PeopleSoft, and the system will say, oh, it's labor, then throw this account value on it when you send it back to PeopleSoft, I think.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So we would bring in from PeopleSoft everything on this part up here minus the account, and then we would assign the account to that chart string at the time that we're trying to build a transaction based on the transaction type.
So how do we validate the entire string, including the account? Because what you're telling me is that we're not going to
find everything but account is already valid. The account is valid on every one of the combinations.
Right. So if we
only put a valid.
No,
whatever's in Tririga would be the valid account string less the account.
I understand that, but my question is, if I'm entering an account because I've got everything else, but I want to put it to a different account number. There's nothing in Tririga that can validate that that account number is a valid account number.
That's correct.
And it can't tell that the whole chart string is correct or the whole account string is correct. All I can tell is the account string minus the account number is correct, and they put some value in the account number.
So if somebody miskeyed the account value.
Well, I would
That's
think
where
unless
I'm going.
you put an override, like say for some reason, somebody doesn't care that it's a labor transaction, they want to use this account on the work task, and we create that there. Otherwise, the account value being assigned would be defaulted based on logic.
Not for projects.
So you'll have to type it in.
If it's capitalized or expense.
Then we just have to probably have a list of values that we bring in out of account outside of the account string. And it'll have to validate against that. Does that make?
And if we enter a voucher without, that's not on a PO, then they would need to enter an account value on that. So that's going to be a manual
So there might be a couple different forms where we're going to have account where it would override and plug that into the string. Okay.
That's the point I was driving to was if we're going to put controls in, and then we're going to need a separate lookup table, if you will, of valid account codes, so that they do override, they're using a valid account code, that an account code that exists more appropriately, so that we're catching typos and errors rather than sending over a bad transaction to PeopleSoft.
I think that's true.
Okay, and that's fair. It's going to cut down the number of account strings that you have to search through, because you won't have a duplicate for every account in the system, so it cuts down that size. But we do want to be able to establish a account number lookup table that we can use to ensure that if they do override the default for that kind of transaction, that what they're entering is a valid account code that we can put into the string.
And that really could be a table that is loaded once a year, because they don't generally add account values in the middle of a year. They're normally only new ones each year.
And
Yep.
not too many.
No, and not too many.
So we might be able to manually maintain that.
Possibly, yeah.
As well.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I think this conversation was excellent, because we have a different perspective on the account string than we had before. I understand the conceptualization of everything but the account, and I just want to make sure that we've identified that we want to edit the account as well to make sure that the string is accurate when we pass it over. Okay.
All right.
Are we past our allotted time?
But I think that was probably everything we wanted.
And you're cutting down our time, so.
Yes, we started, 10 minutes late, so.
Was there anything else that you wanted to cover, though, or was that?
I have two items. I just wanted to see what you guys thought. So we had done two kind of like pre-meetings with Kim back in June that kind of went over a little bit about our current system and how we bill and the actual transactions. That is actually available to watch. So there's two of them. There was one on, and it's on a list of all of these are on a list. If needed, I can email it to you.
David, which one?
Or yeah, I can send it to David and just send him. And I think there was, I think there were two of them. One was the credit and debit pre-session, and the other one was an as-is credit debit discussion and demo. Do you think that would be, that all it is showing our current tool?
Yeah, I'd love to see those.
Yeah, I think
you've seen them already?
No, Frank hasn't.
No, I'd love to see them.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that way, we don't have to waste time.
And then if you have any questions, you can.
Now, how does the credit and debit go in here? In the account code?
Okay, these demos, that's where it talks, and then I think you put together something to every transaction, the way our system is currently configured, says where the credit and the debit
come. If I charge something, if I'm doing credit, it's the same account string.
The credit is defined by the type of transaction in our current tool.
And it follows
it's not
the
something a user.
Same logic.
Yeah, it's a valid account string
Yep.
as far as PeopleSoft is concerned. It's just the type of each transaction, the credit is kind of predetermined as to what it should be.
Yeah,
and this is,
that'd be good to see what you
this logic is kind of used, well, I mean, it's used both sides, but a lot of this, we're charging other departments for services above our support level, you know, so that's where we're kind of doing a lot of the pre-validation here to get in the valid account strings, chart strings, to charge back whomever.
You did touch on the conditional optional.
Yeah.
I think we'll touch on that next week.
Yeah, we can certainly touch on it. As to
when you say conditional optional, when does that come into play?
kind of at a department's request. I mean, we use the chart field 1 here in new services a lot for projects. So we set up a unique chart field 1 value that maps back to a specific construction project. So every account string is going to flow through this logic and have this unique chart field 1 for that project, so that all costs related to that project we can tie back to PeopleSoft.
Okay, so you can lump it together.
Yeah.
Okay, by project. Okay.
Chart field 2 is kind of very optional, and departments will use it for any variety of reasons, you know, to kind of capture certain activities, but we don't know necessarily if we get an account string from a customer. They just say it's this fund FID program. In chart field 2, it's 10 digits long, so it's a long digit number, you know. So they'll just tell us what their account string is, and we don't necessarily need to know what they're using.
From PeopleSoft?
Yeah, the valid values would come from PeopleSoft, and for us to charge against it, it would have to be set up and activated in PeopleSoft. You know, their unique account string with their chart field 2 on it. So the same with any project. When we get a new construction project, we have to set up any account code we're going to charge against, you know, so we have to make sure in PeopleSoft it's enabled, this chart field 1 is set up, and this at fund FID program level, this chart field 1 is set up so that people can...
These two separate fields, or that's underneath that?
These two?
Yeah, these, no, I'm just saying from the fund department ID account, is one feed, and this would be a separate feed?
No, it would all be in the same feed. That
all the valid combinations
will be in
a feed.
So whenever we set up a new project, we have to make sure any fund FID and program that's already set up is also open with this new chart field 1 value on it. So we have to create that whole new account string in PeopleSoft so that we can charge payables or make journal entries against that account string. It is a bit of, but it's a lot more restrictive than it used to be, because when we first started PeopleSoft 10 years ago, as long as it was a valid value, you could charge any combination of values. So
yeah, we would get lots of saying they were wrong.
Yeah, we would charge departments for this, that, or the other thing, and they would come back and say that's wrong, you know, that there was no pre-validation of the complete combination of values.
That's good.
Thank you.
All right, I think.
Thank you, Frank.
Sorry. Okay.
Welcome.
I got
It's been a
it.
pleasure chatting with you today.
Pardon me?
It's been a pleasure chatting with all of you today.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks, Frank.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. So,
And we'll meet you all in person next week.
Okay.
Sounds good.
thank you.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
I am ending.